Welcome to Community Conservation, a series that presents projects, ideas, and people surrounding conservation in Oregon. I'm your host, Sarah Armstrong, the marketing manager at the Oregon Wildlife Foundation. We're an organization dedicated to funding wildlife and habitat conservation work throughout Oregon since 1981. You can learn about our projects, partners, and funding at myowf.org. A big thank you to On Point Community Credit Union, Wild, and Arnrich Messina, who are sponsoring today's episode, which allows us to keep making this free conservation resource for all. With me today is OWF Development Manager Calais Augustine joining our discussion. Thanks, Calais, for being here.
So, have you heard about the Watch for Wildlife license plate yet? It is the newest and we think coolest license plate coming soon to Oregon DMVs. This license plate features a mule deer and Mount Hood, and it says Watch for Wildlife. If you're wondering why there's a mule deer on the plate, it's because it's a species that is in decline, unfortunately. And mule deer are further threatened by collisions with cars and trucks on busy roads all across Oregon. So since mule deer seasonally migrate, they unfortunately have to deal with a lot of roads and development within their natural corridors. So the foundation is going to work on addressing safe animal passage for mule deer and other types of wildlife along roads with the license plate proceeds. So the proceeds from the sales and renewals of the plate will support safe animal passage projects in Oregon, specifically habitat connectivity for all types of wildlife. If you want to be in the first group of purchasers, now's the time to get one and help us get this plate launched. They're $40 and you can buy one on our website. Thanks.
All right, well, let's dive in and introduce our speakers. Today's dam presentation is on the removal of dams, who is involved and who benefits. We'll also get the scoop on a current project, the removal of the Eagle Fern Dam, and what that means for Clackamas County. Our first speaker is project manager and owner of Confluence Consulting, Denise Hoffert. Denise, welcome.
I am not a native Oregonian. I moved to Oregon after finishing my undergraduate at the University of Minnesota, and I had read the book, The Monkey Wrench Gang by Edward Abbey. And for folks who aren't familiar, it's a book about dams in the American West and well, a form of community activism to address infrastructure. And I never imagined that I would be in a position someday to be taking dams out of rivers and streams, but that's just what I did when I started my career with the Calapooya Watershed Council. And I began there in 2002, and I've been working on dam removal and other habitat restoration projects throughout Western Oregon ever since. So.
Thanks so much for being here. And also with us is stream restoration biologist Dave Stewart. Dave, thanks for being here. Would you like to give a little bit more about yourself?
Yeah, thanks for having me. I'm a stream restoration biologist. I've been with ODFW for about 20 years now, and about half that time was working in research, and the second half has been stream restoration. So essentially, I work with landowners, interest groups, anybody that's involved in helping recover. You know, we focus on salmon and steelhead. So those are the couple of the high priority endangered species, but anything around habitat restoration, I'm there to help, you know, private landowners, groups, anybody involved.
Right on, thanks. Well, not being a biologist myself or knowing much about the purposes of dams, I'm really interested to understand this process. Denise, it sounds like you're going to start us off today with a presentation, right?
Yes. Great. All right. So I'm just going to give an overview of dam removal in the US and then dam removal in Oregon, and provide some examples of successfully completed projects that have happened in Oregon in the last few years. And then also share some resources for more information if anyone who's watching and listening today has or knows of someone who owns a dam on their property and would like some assistance with it, places that they can go to get information about how to start that process. So when we think about dams, a lot of us probably think about the really large infrastructure dams, like the dams on the Elwha, the dams on the main stem Columbia River, the dams down in the Klamath. And And those dams and many others are candidates for removal. But a lot of dams that come out in the state of Oregon would never make anyone's radar screen. An example of that is this dam from the North Fork Clascanine River that was removed in 2020. When dams costs for doing upgrades and repairs outweigh their benefits, and if the dam is no longer serving a useful purpose, removal can be a really good option. So a little pop quiz for people. How many dams are there in the state of Oregon? Fewer than 1,000, 1,000 to 1,500, 1,500 to 2,500, or who knows? And actually, the answer is D. The state of Oregon, the Oregon Water Resources Department maintains a database of dams, but they only inventory dams that are higher than 10 feet or that impound more than 9.2 acre feet of water. And there are 1,500 dams on that list, but there are countless other dams that are not counted and maintained. And the dam that we're going to be focusing on in Dave's presentation a bit later, Eagle Fern Dam, is not one of them that was on this statewide inventory. And most of the projects that I'm going to be sharing later in this presentation were not in that inventory either. So there's a lot of infrastructure in the state that is not regularly looked at or examined. And frequently when we're working on rivers and in stream systems, we find dams that weren't on anyone's radar screen. And there have been several of those even just within the past year where people are out looking at one project and then they do a little further investigation upstream and they find there's another structure that nobody even knew was still there. So abandoned dams are everywhere in Oregon's waterways. And why this is a concern is that anything that's more than 6 inches in height prevents juvenile salmonids from reaching their cool water refugia habitat in the summer months and shelter from high winter flows during the winter months. And a lot of times people think that if a fish ladder gets built at a dam, that solves all the problems. And for these little guys, it really doesn't. Fish ladders can be a good tool for assisting adults in their migration upstream. But the smaller fish really don't benefit from the installation of fish ladders, especially at these really small privately owned structures. So over 1,700 dams have been removed from US waterways since 1912. And this is a map from the American Rivers website that folks can go to if they're interested in looking at information. Each of these blue markers, it has a pop-up that you can click on to get more information about that particular structure. And within the state of Oregon, American Rivers catalogs 65 dams that have been removed, reconnecting more than 1,200 miles of habitat. So dam owners and communities throughout Oregon are embracing dam removal as a tool to address the challenges of aging and obsolete infrastructure. And I'm going to provide a few examples of those from around the state. So this is a photo from the dam removal ceremony from my first dam removal project on my home river, the Calapooya River. I live in the Calapooya watershed in the Willamette Valley. And the community was so interested in this project and so excited to see this come together that we actually held a ceremony with speeches and just an opportunity for folks to talk about their experience with the project. It was attended by the news media, and it was right as we were beginning construction. This was a really fun day. Another dam removal ceremony, again, with a lot of community interest and community involvement for the Sodom and Shearer dams that were removed, again, from my home waters in the Calapooya in 2011. And a photo of one of those dams, the Sodom Dam, before it was removed and then following its removal. A really common question that people have when we're tackling a dam removal project is, what is their river going to look like when that structure is no longer there? And I think a lot of these photos today will show that really the river looks like a river right after the dam is removed, especially with these really small structures. Dams are being removed in Western Oregon, Central Oregon. This is a project from the Deschutes River Basin, the Stearns Dam, that was removed in 2013. dams get built for all different purposes and they're removed for lots of different purposes. And this was an abandoned irrigation dam. The landowner had switched over to pumping at an entirely different location. So the dam was just sitting there, an impediment to red band trout, mountain whitefish, steelhead, and Chinook. And its removal just straight up just took the dam out of the river and allowed the river to be free flowing through this section once again up to Bowman Dam. Up in the Columbia River Valley, the Odell Creek Dam was removed from the Hood River Basin in 2017. And this was a micro hydro facility. And the updates that would be required to bring their existing ladder up to current standards weren't economically feasible. The income they were generating from microhydro wasn't enough to offset the cost of upgrading this infrastructure. So this dam was removed and a roughened channel installed. Down in Southwest Oregon, I've got a couple of examples of projects that have been built in recent years to improve fish passage. This was an abandoned dam associated with a a lumber mill facility, and it was no longer needed, and it was in blocking access to over 4 miles of steelhead and cutthroat trout habitat. In an urban watershed, the Kelly Creek Dam came out of Johnson Creek watershed in 2020 and restored 3.5 miles of upstream habitat. In the Rogue Basin, the Lower Bridgepoint Dam on Williams Creek was removed in 2020. It was supplying flow to irrigate organic agriculture. And when this dam was removed, a roughened channel was built in its place to continue, to supply flows to their irrigation diversion. And their irrigation diversion was also piped as part of the project. So you can see here, it had been an open channel, and here it's now enclosed in a pipe. And the channel elevation, the bed of the river, was brought up by importing rock and sand and gravel materials to maintain the height that the push-up dam had previously provided. They reconstructed that stream bed to maintain that elevation to allow irrigation via gravity flow to continue, but without having a structure in the river that would impede fish passage.
Hey, Denise, quick question for you.
Absolutely.
How long does it take to remove a dam?
Oh, that's a really good question. So I like to talk about dam removal projects as an iceberg. And the base of the iceberg, the part that you can't see underwater, is the years that it typically takes to do the landowner outreach, to get the engineering designs, to get the permitting in place, to secure all the funding. And then building the project is the very top part, and it goes the fastest. These projects all get built within one summer in-water work window, and most of these really small projects takes less than a month from start to finish. So we may spend, 2, 3, 4, 5 or more years working with the landowner, working with the permitting, working to get the engineering designs together and the funding, and then the dam is gone in a blink. And so that can be kind of surprising to landowners. This is a dam that came out on the North Coast in 2020 on the Clatskanie. It was at an ODFW managed and run hatchery, and it was no longer being used. So it was a great candidate for a removal. All the projects that I showed today, if you just Google the name of that dam, you can find more information about that particular structure. But I shared a few resources here. Of course, the Kalapuya, my home watershed, I'm going to plug the video that was made highlighting those projects. The Rogue River Basin has a story map that highlights there's lots more projects that I didn't even mention today that have occurred there, where you can get more information about those, and also information about the main stem dam removals that were probably some people have heard of, the Savage Rapids dam removal and Gold Hill Gold Ray that happened in the mid-2000s. Stearns Dam removal has a video that was produced by American Rivers. That's a fun watch. It's less than 10 minutes. And then just a few resources for places where folks can go to get more information if they want to tackle a small dam removal project. And wherever you live in Oregon, you live in a watershed that is covered by a watershed council. And I would encourage folks to go to this website to find out how to reach their local watershed council if they would like to get some assistance with evaluating a structure on their property. And American Rivers has just a wealth of resources about dam removal for anyone who's interested in doing a little more reading about how these projects come together. And I just want to close by highlighting just a few of the partners that have worked to pull the projects together that I mentioned in the slideshow. All of these projects require a coalition of people coming together. So the landowner, the funders, the state and federal local agency staff people, these projects require just a real community and collaborative effort. And there's a lot of people that that participate when it comes to bringing these projects to construction.
What can people expect when a dam is removed? Like, what are the basic things that, like, if I were to walk by, is it going to be really smelly and weird? Like, is there going to be flooding right away? Because I know, like you mentioned, the blocks that you had to put so that there was even level on that one dam, but like, what are the other just like first things that you notice when a dam is removed?
I think the first thing that people notice is how the river really looks like the river. It just, if you didn't know, basically one season after a dam comes out and the vegetation grows back up, if you didn't know a dam had been there, you would never know it had been. That our rivers are really resilient and they recover really quickly. The sediment that gets stored behind the dam following that first big winter flow event that we get. So in Oregon, you know, we go all these months, all summer without any rainfall, and then we'll have a big storm event, you know, in October or November, and that flushing flow moves that stored sediment and redistributes it downstream really quickly. Within that first winter, typically that sediment gets moved downstream to fill in places that have been starved of sediment by the dam being in place. And I would say if you have the opportunity to see a dam removal, take advantage of that, because the projects happen so quickly. You go by 1 week, there'll be equipment there and activity, and you go back the next week and it'll all be gone. So you should take a minute to stop and watch a river being restored.
Wow. Thank you. Thanks for that presentation and the resources. That's super cool that there's that map that you can play around with and learn more about that too.
Yeah, that's on American Rivers website. It's really easy to get to.
Right on. All right, and to kind of focus things in a little bit more, Dave, you have a presentation on a specific dam.
Yeah, I do. Hang on one sec here. Right. Yeah, thanks, Denise. So I'm going to take us down and kind of narrow down. Denise did a good job talking about the overall, the bigger picture of the country and the state. But now we're going to narrow down to this one single project, and this is the Eagle Fern Dam Removal Project. And you can see this, you know, this photo gives you a good summertime flow, and you can see all the people swimming and enjoying the benefits of the dam. I mean, this is one of those kind of the, you know, I guess, you know, a challenge is at some dams, right? Because sometimes dams do provide structures and things for people to swim in, like in this situation. So part of the, you know, the process here was talking to the county to find a solution to removing this dam for the benefit of fish, but also still providing a resource for local communities. So I'll touch on that a little bit as we go. But yeah, this is very, you know, this is a low head dam. It definitely, comparatively to some of the large dams that have been removed around the region, this is a small dam. One most notably, I don't think that Denise touched on, was the Marmot Dam Removal Project on the Sandy, which kind of really kicked off a lot of these dam removal projects. And this is actually in the Clackamas Basin, but we're only, you know, a short drive over to the Sandy. So, you know, I think the dam removals really got going full steam ahead starting, you know, from that project. But, you know, like Denise showed, we've done projects, it's amazing, right, all around the country now. So I'm just going to walk us through quickly, talk about what we're going to be getting into today. And part of this is just, you know, why are we doing, you know, I want to talk about why is this dam removal important, the species that we're benefiting, and just talk about kind of what it took to get this completed. You know, this, and you could see this is one of the pieces, a little bit of a, this is the left side of that dam structure at higher flow. And you can see actually erosion occurring, and there's some safety issues, which we're going to be addressing as part of the removal. So, you know, again, getting to why would we want to do this? This project, this dam has been sitting here for, you know, since the 60s, essentially, for a long time. And, but like Denise noted, a big part of this is that there's a lot of fish that have been impacted for years, and we just didn't, you know, have the capacity to eliminate and remove all the dams. So we're just finally, you know, getting to this one. But part of the, you know, and some of this is, you know, we're talking again about it, but delaying migration for salmonids is really important. People, I think when they look at small dams like this, they might think, well, a fish can get by that, no problem. But you really don't think of the delayed migration. So sometimes just the fact that if you slow down a fish from migrating to spawn when it wants to, that can affect a whole, you know, potentially cohort of the population. And for juvenile fish, this is essentially a complete barrier for most of the flows throughout the year. So again, getting back to that cold water refugia that Denise talked about is critical. I noted the safety hazard, and really, you know, Eagle Creek, this is the bigger picture piece, but Eagle Creek is a tributary to the Clackamas River, which is one of our highest priorities for recovering salmon. And I'm going to touch on that a little bit more as we go here. So just to give you a broad picture of where we're at, on the left inset, that just shows you the dot is Eagle Fern Park. And then up in the left corner up here is essentially Portland. So if you head out from Portland and drive down and hop on 212 and 224 and head up, you know, upriver, you're going to eventually cross Eagle Fern or Eagle Creek. And if you take this road up, you can get to Eagle Fern Park in, you know, a few minutes. And the really cool thing about this area is you see some different habitats. This is a clear cut in here. You know, it's a diverse kind of mosaic of, you know, rural residential, forested, there's some old growth forest, but as you go up into the upper basin, you get into national forest and some old growth forest. So it's really, again, making that story about, you know, why are we doing this? It's to allow fish to get up accessing some of the habitats that are more productive than what you might find lower in the basin. And that's a big reason, again, why we're doing this. Denise, you know, talked about this as well, but ESA listed species is a big part of the funding on these projects. If we didn't have ESA listed fish, coho salmon, Chinook salmon, steelhead, we might not have funding to do these projects. But because these fish are listed, because we have determined that these are a priority for us, funders, organizations are willing to give us money to fix their habitat, right, to provide passage and access. And you know, this is kind of, you can see these are all adult fish surrounding, you know, you've got steelhead down here in the bottom, coho and Chinook. And then this little fish, this is a, you know, a little coho. I mean, it's probably 3, 4, 5 inches big, right? But so important. And again, I always go back to the story of my, when I first got going in this field, and one of my bosses said, talking about the forest, like, why do we need to save the forests, right? The old growth forest. And part of it is like, if they're gone, you know, that's part of Oregon, that's part of the Northwest. And I think salmon is the same thing. If we lose all these salmonids, these endangered species, I mean, are we really still, it's not Oregon, right? I mean, essentially we're losing a big part of what makes it an amazing place to live. So for us, it all comes back to, you know, right now, the Lower Columbia Conservation Recovery Plan. This is what the state of Oregon has set as the way that we're going to recover these species. And part of this goes back to the Oregon Salmon Plan, which was created in the early 90s when a lot of these Endangered Species Acts, when all this was really hitting hard. We had really low numbers of salmon returning. And essentially the state of Oregon came in and said, you know what, let's do this as a state. Let's try to fix these problems. And that's when the local watershed councils were developed and a lot of these great community groups that we have now. But now we really talk about the Conservation Recovery Plan, which sets the stage to tell us exactly what we need to do to get to recovery of these fish. And, you know, of course, we're not there yet. We have a ton of work to do, but we're just, you know, we're slowly working our way through this. And this project here is just one example of a small project that adds to the bigger picture. You know, and this is a big, you know, you know, plan, but essentially it goes down to limiting factors. If you want to really narrow it down, we talk about these limiting factors, and these are the things that really, if we address these factors, these things that are listed in this recovery plan, we have a good chance of restoring these populations. And passage obstructions is a big part of that. Off-channel habitat is a big part of that. These are the key limiting factors, and each species has different limiting factors that we're addressing. But for coho, off-channel habitat, fish passage structures are big pieces to the puzzle. So wherever we can provide more habitat, remove passage obstructions, we're going to be on our way. And like I said, the Clackamas Basin in this recovery plan for the lower Columbia River is our highest priority. There's essentially just a few basins that we have said we're going to put all of our work right now into recovering these. We're not going to leave everything else out, but this is important for us. So I just want to, and you can look at that online and read more. So just a little bit of a perspective of what we're talking about here. Looking at the forest again. This is a diverse forest. Dave Bugney is a private landowner who's been doing amazing work in this area, and he provided these photos of his drone. But this is essentially the North Fork of Eagle. We're looking upstream here, and you can just see there's a younger forest that's been clear cut, and here's the older forest, and Eagle Creek is essentially over here. But again, getting to that point, I like to really drive home the point that the restoration work we're doing now, some of it, the large wood restoration, it all connects to the forest because the forest habitat is our long-term, right? In 100 years from now, when we're gone, the forest, this little forest that's a young forest, is going to be 100 years old, is going to be 200 years old. So I think thinking about the broader perspective is hard for people to do because we like to have things right now, but this is a long-term play. Everything we're doing now is it's not tens of years. We got to think bigger timeline. And then again, this is a different shot. So this is now looking the opposite way, coming down, and to the left is the bridge that goes over the North Fork of Eagle, and then Eagle Fern Park is up here. But you can just see these trees. It's hard to tell, but these are massive trees, right? Some of these are old growth trees. And it's all connected. Again, the North Fork of Eagle is going this way. Our project is right down at the bottom of the screen, and right in the middle of this forest. So I want to quickly just jump into a little bit on the project itself. We looked at that first photo, which showed the dam. Now this is the design. We had a consultant actually draw up some designs, and we had to obtain funding to do this waterways consulting. So this would be if you're up in the sky looking down on the stream, and from left to right is Eagle Creek flowing this way, and this is actually the dam structure that we're going to be removing. Essentially, this whole piece is going to be removed. The brown areas are bedrock. So this has all been analyzed to determine what is the stream going to do when we remove this, right? Because that's a big part of it. In some of these areas, you might get a large head cut that could affect passage. And this is where the like Denise said, sometimes it takes a long time to implement these projects. And in this one, it's hang on one sec. But for this project, with the work we did, and this is why we spent the money here, because you might not have known the fact that with these bedrock areas, these natural channel areas, this is going to help us basically not have to worry about a head cut. So the money that we spent to develop this project let us know, and the county wanted to know as well, what's going to happen when we remove this? Are we going to have a big problem with the banks eroding? And we wanted to make sure the county was well aware that we were thinking about all of these problems, because these are the sorts of objections that people have. And and these projects, again, they cost money, right? Some of these are hundreds of thousands, millions of dollars, right, to do this. So it can be challenging to get funding to do this. But so that's the design. It's really pretty straightforward. Essentially, when I first got here, I literally walked up the site and then I kind of jokingly said, man, I feel like I could almost grab an excavator and do this myself, because it's just literally, we're just taking this dam out. But there's just, even though this is a very basic project, there's so much involved. And Denise said it. I mean, there's years of development to get up to this point where we're at, to have everybody on board. And I can tell you, not everybody's on board. I mean, everybody's on board for this project. Great. There's other areas, and this is why getting the outreach is important, because there's other counties, people around the state that hear the word dam removal and they hear it as a bad thing, right? Because it's become political. And I think it's really important to realize that I think it's helpful for everybody to understand why we're doing this, because we have a very similar project in another area where it hasn't been as easy to implement because of politics. So this has been awesome. And I love the fact that we're sharing this project because it's been a real success story.
Hey, Dave, what are a couple of you don't have to go too much into this, but what are some of the strategic steps that go into the planning process? Probably like surveying is the one I know.
Yeah. The strategic steps as far as just the whole process.
Yeah, for the planning stage, because I mean, you guys are saying, you know, when it comes down to it, you just go in there and you remove the dam in a
Yeah,
certain way, but
yeah,
what
yeah.
goes into the planning?
Yeah, so there is a lot. I mean, you know, just starting out off of like when are we doing it, right? So there's in-water timing. You got to determine when we're, and then in fact, this is a good example because this one was we're doing it a little bit later than typically is we do these projects, but that's just because we want to avoid Labor Day and when there's actually going to be a lot of people here. So we had to go through those steps. There's a whole regulatory process through the ESA to get to that. We have to get approval just to work a couple weeks later than we normally would. You know, I mentioned the county. We had to go through the board approval process. We had to present to the board. They wanted to know what we're doing, right? Everybody, they don't quite know, so I had to present to them. There's been a whole history. We had to develop a whole MOU with the county saying, you know, steps of what we're doing and then what happens if something happens, right? I mean, lots of layers to get here for sure. And, you know, it's good though, because I think you want to make sure you're in a situation where something does happen, that you're prepared for it. And, you know, I'm the project manager essentially. So at the end of the day, everything comes back to me on this project. And I feel good about that because I know Eagle Creek well. I know Salmon well. And I think that, you know, I feel like we've got it covered. We've got a good group of partners involved. But yeah, there's just a whole list of things that we could talk about, from all the permitting. I mean, the permitting just itself is a very detailed process. There's multiple local, state, federal agencies, you know, the tribal connection. I mean, there's, you name the government organization and they're likely involved in this. So, you know, and again, it's hard. It's a lot of work. It costs a lot of money to do that, but it's important because we are dealing with endangered species. And, you know, although we are all very focused on the conservation side of it, you know, there are folks out there that maybe don't know about this. And we get stories every year where we get a call, you know, hey, their guy has an excavator in the creek while salmon are spawning, you know. So people are doing things out there that would blow you away, but that happens. So that's why the process is there. So yeah, and this is just a quick shot of what good habitat looks like. This is a shot up in the upper headwaters of some large wood, which is natural. The gravel is you have this gravel recruitment behind it, which is amazing. And you see this pool? This is the off-channel habitat that the coho love. This is natural. This tree naturally fell in the river, dammed up the stream, and now these little juvenile fish are living in here for a year or two before they migrate out to the ocean. So this is the stuff, this is the reason we're doing the dam removal, to get fish up to this habitat. That's kind of why we do it. So just as I'm kind of wrapping up here, just had a couple more quick slides. And this goes into, again, the bigger picture. If this was just a one-off project and it was just Eagle Fern Dam, it might not be as appealing to all of the people involved. But the fact is, this is just one project in a bigger grand scheme of things. In Eagle Creek, these are all projects that have been completed over the years. There was a large wood project in the 2000s. We've had multiple large wood fish passage improvements. Just in 2020 at the mouth, the confluence of Eagle Creek and the Clackamas, there was a large wood project. There's a project coming up in Upper River, another dam removal. And in 22, we have a project set to do probably what might be one of the largest wood projects, restoration projects in the North Fork of Eagle Creek. So again, everything's coming together to restore. We're really trying to tackle this entire sub-basin, which is Eagle Creek, and that benefits the overall Clackamas Basin. And we're just our little group, right? We haven't even talked about the Watershed Council, which is doing amazing work all over downstream. You've got the Forest Service in the Upper Basin in the National Forest. They're doing great work. So, I mean, I think the Clackamas is really a great example of what the Watershed Council and the community involvement is all about. This just shows you, again, some more partners. I'm going to show you our partners for this project, but you know, just you can see this little purple is the Eagle Fern Park right here, that same spot. But right around us is Portland General Electric. PG is a huge partner for us. They have, you know, a dam up on the Clackamas River, but they've done amazing stuff for restoration work. They're a great partner. The BLM, they actually own a large chunk of the North Fork. We're going to be working with them over the next couple of years. And Weyerhaeuser, right? Weyerhaeuser, the largest industrial landowner I think in the world, right? They own more property than anybody else. And they've actually been a good partner for us over the years. In fact, this section here was purchased by the Soil and Water Conservation District and now isn't owned by Weyerhaeuser, but is protected. And it's a community forest now. So it's a really cool story that we have going, and we're just telling it. And these are some of the partners, you know, obviously Oregon Wildlife Foundation, you know, you all putting this together. It's been amazing working with Tim and everybody over the years. and the county, just everybody. We're all in it for the same, we all enjoy being outdoors and doing what we do, but we couldn't do it without all of the partners. So that's all I have for you.
How is this dam different than a lot of others, or is it? Do you think that there are other, or you would probably just know,
Yeah.
are there similar dams like within a park or within this kind of area that do the same thing?
Similar dams to this one?
Yeah.
Yeah, there's lots. These low head dams are they're everywhere. I mean, we just a number of years ago removed a dam that was almost identical to this one on a tributary downstream on the Clackamas. There's big, little, small, you name it, right? I mean, there's all sorts of, to give you an idea, the thing that we talked about, Denise talked about previously, is we had a survey crew that was up on another basin, was just doing a spawning survey, had no idea, and they ran into a 25-foot high structure dam. Nobody knew it was even there, right? And that's a big structure.
Whoops.
So that just shows you the scale. A lot of the big dams, Marmot Dam, you've got, some of these massive dams that have already been removed, and all the stuff that's going down in Southern Oregon, those are these massive dams. And of course, the lower Snake River dams is probably the biggest thing that you hear a lot about. And, there's a lot of politics there on those. But, again, I don't, for me, it doesn't matter if it's small or big. I think we just need to get as many of these as removed as possible, because all these things add up together, and this one is going to have a huge impact for the Clackamas Basin.
Well, and if you're a 6-inch fish, a 3-foot tall dam, or a 30-foot tall dam, it doesn't matter. It's the same result to you. You can't get past it. So, the cumulative impact of all these small structures on the landscape in terms of miles of habitat that has impeded or blocked access is a tremendous amount of habitat on these tributary streams. And like Dave has been talking about, the importance of Eagle Creek within the Clackamas, these tributary streams are where a lot of fish are spending a good chunk of their life cycle. And so this tributary habitat is just tremendously important to the recovery of these species.
Yeah.
And that's where these small structures come into play, and their removal comes into play.
Exactly.
And even past, so there's, you're talking about fish recovery, populations getting stronger, and then it's just from there. It's like, well, if there's more habitat, the animals who come in and they need to feed off the vegetation, those populations come back and everything grows, right?
Well, and the dam removal is sort of the first step. I mean, it was really neat to see Dave show those photos of the old growth, the timbered hillsides and the habitat that we're restoring access to, because dam removal is just one piece of the recovery puzzle for salmon. And, getting fish there, getting them to the habitat, that's one step, but then having high quality habitat for them to return to is another really important piece. And so these projects to restore large wood in particular really go hand in hand with fish passage work. So
yeah, there's a lot of work. I would just highlight that. I mean, there's been a lot of work in the research and documenting why, we say large wood is just a common word for us, large wood restoration, because we just know it's a no-brainer, right? I mean, these streams, if you imagine historically what these streams look like when trees naturally fell over the channel, old growth tree, it would last for decades, right? Decades and decades. But what happened is there was a period of time where not the too distant future, in the 80s, 70s and 80s, where literally we were going, well, not we, but people were going in the channel with excavators, cleaning the channels out, right? So removing all the trees, because we thought that the idea was, let's keep them open, right? Fish passage. We want to remove all that wood. So we systematically went in and a lot of these groups removed the trees. And because of that, and now we've clear cut, so there aren't a lot of old growth trees left. We don't have a lot of big trees to hold up. So Eagle Creek's a good example. You need a pretty big tree to last in Eagle Creek to provide habitat. And that's the struggle. So as you get into these areas, I think I tend to look at the large wood restoration as almost like I said earlier, it's almost like a Band-Aid fix, because the longer term fix is growing up big enough trees that they naturally fall in, for the future.
Great. Well, thank you so much for that presentation, both of you, Denise and Dave. Definitely learned a lot myself, because like I said at the beginning, I really, it's just one of those things where when you're even a kid and you're going on a road trip, like you visit the dams, like you don't really think about it. It's just part of, especially in the Pacific Northwest where it's kind of common and they're easily accessed by people. I guess I've just never really thought about it other than working at the foundation, of course, and understanding how fish are affected by dams and large weighted debris. We have a lot of those kinds of projects, and I know that they're efficient and they're cost efficient too, but it does take so many partnerships to really get everybody together in that planning stage. So Kalei, did you have any follow-up questions for our speakers?
Yeah, I do. I'm curious specifically about the Eagle Creek Dam and the process of like, when is this removal going to happen, and like how many days is it going to take?
Yeah, it's like I was saying earlier, typically the in-water work period for these areas, it's the recommended period is July 15th through August 31st. So it's a very short window, very narrow, and that's because we have species that are spawning actively in June and even earlier when spring Chinook and coho come in the fall, they're spawning. So we try to avoid the fall. But like I said, for this one, we didn't want to go before Labor Day because there's going to be a lot of people there. So the county said, if you do it after Labor Day, there'll be a lot less people. So we actually got an in-water extension to do the work starting the day after Labor Day. So we're going to start the day after Labor Day, and we have a 2-week window to actually implement the project. And my guess is we're probably only going to be in stream for a few days, maybe a week, to get this thing out, and we're going to be out of the creek and be cleaning things up on the second week.
And then are all the pieces, it's cement, right? Is the cement all removed, or is some of it like broken down and left?
Yeah, it's all. Yep. Go ahead, Denise.
Yeah, all the concrete will get taken out, and typically we work with a contractor that will be reusing it. And for this project, we don't know yet if they'll have another project they can rubbleize it, break it into small pieces. I've worked on a lot of projects where they'll take that and use it as road bed material on another project that they're working on. But if that's not possible for this one, they'll haul it to an off-channel permanent disposal facility. And it's not considered, it's completely non-toxic. It's concrete is completely safe, and so it would just get taken out. And if there's any rebar that got used in the construction, they'll pull that out and it'll get taken to recycling. So.
Great. Well, thank you again both for your presentations. And Kalei, if you have any other follow-up questions, or if I have any follow-up questions, I'll be sure to post those online and get those questions to you guys. A shout out to our sponsors again, Wild and Arnrich Messina and On Point Community Credit Union for sponsoring today's episode. And thank you both to you for your expertise and your time, and Kalei for joining our panel discussion today. And thank you to everybody who is able to join the live broadcast for this and live speaker chat episode. We will release community conservation episodes monthly, and we actually do have this really incredible lineup for the rest of summer and fall, and you won't want to miss it. So please follow this series. You can share episodes or even watch them again by visiting myowf.org. And we will see you next month.